Today, our instructor is Mr. Christion Sadler. It's always a pleasure to be around Christion. Here is a fellow that he just looks for opportunities to create value wherever he is. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen him take a bottle of water or a drink up to whoever is the trainer of the day that's presenting at the front of the room, and it doesn't matter. I've seen him in various locales, at property tours, at the workshops, at the live tapings at the Renatus corporate studio. This guy, wherever he is looking to bring the most, and this morning he's bringing it to us. We're grateful to have you here, Christion. How are you this morning?
I am great, Ron. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about today.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to share with you folks. And interesting morning already. So just kind of let you guys imagine this or envision it, because it really ties into what I was inspired to talk to you folks about today. So I woke up out in Oakley and got ready to head into the city. And as I went outside, it was like summer outside. I will tell you guys, it was warm. It was, the sun wasn't quite up yet, but it was already light. And it was a great greeting of the day. And as I started driving through the canyons, and there was a little bit of rain, just trickling down. And when I hit Park City, the most gorgeous sight, this huge rainbow that went all the way across the whole valley of Park City. So it was like spring. It was like this beautiful spring day that I was getting into. And as I passed Park City and started heading up Parley's Canyon, it started to really feel like fall. The temperature changed very quickly, and that rain started to get a bit harder. And then as I came to the top, as I came to Parley's summit, you guys could imagine I had hit winter. I mean, there was snow and there was sleet, and it was coming down, and I could barely see, and the roads were slippery. That was my experience this morning. I gotta give it up to Utah, because it's one of those places where you can experience every single season within one commute, within not just one day, but just one commute. Right? Before 9 a.m., I've experienced all 4 seasons. And, I'm grateful for that, because I embrace change. I love it. I'm addicted to it. But it really brought a thought to my mind of the seasons of our business, right? And excuse me. And when I was thinking about the seasons, I was thinking about a harvest, right? So if we were all looking at our business as if it was a harvest, a farm, I want you to imagine this for a second. What seasons do you do which activities? See, there's oftentimes that we get caught up in focusing on activities when our business is not yet in the season for that activity. So what do I mean by that? Well, in spring, what do we do? What's the most important thing to do if we're growing our crops, right? If we're producing a harvest, spring is where it all begins, isn't it? Because if not for spring, the rest is, probably not going to happen. What do I mean by that? Well, spring is the time that we plant, isn't it? Spring is the time that we plow the fields. Now, I live out in the country now these days, so I get to see this a little bit. There's some farming going on out there, and I see all the tractors coming out, and I see all the fields getting different instruments drug across them, and I see all that stuff happening. It's still a little bit cold, so they're not doing the planting yet. But in spring, what do? We plant. So what activities in our business is planting? You guys already know the answer. I'm sure of it. You're thinking in your own mind. Well, that is when you start your lead generation. That is when you start having your warm market conversation. And think about this for a second. If we were focused on having a harvest, and we were jumping to, and we just started digging up the ground and trying to pull up anything that we could find, when we hadn't yet planted in the spring, would that do us a lot of good? No, right? If we were focused on nurturing, nurturing the ground and keeping weeds free, but we had never planted any seeds, would that activity do us much good? It wouldn't. And here's the beautiful thing. We are not subject to being on the whims of nature. We don't have to wait for the season. However, we do have to create the harvest. See, I see many people, they're focused on all these activities about how they're going to run their team, and they're thinking about traveling to other places, and they're, creating in their mind these workshops that they're going to do all over the country. And they don't have any lead generation out. And they have excuses of why they can't talk to their warm market. They have all these grandiose ideas, and sometimes they even spend a lot of their time on harvest type activities, on nurture type activities. Here's the thing, folks. You gotta have the spring first. You've got to plant the seeds first. And this was really and I see a lot of people clicking off the phone. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but it's the truth. It's the same thing for your real estate business. Folks, you got to plant the seeds. Now, once you plant the seeds, what do? If you've planted all of your seeds and then you just leave that field and come back to it 4 months later, what's your field going to look like? For any of you that are farmers, you probably know. Well, if you haven't, sprayed your pesticides, well, then you probably have a lot of bugs in there. Your crop might be, taken up by the bugs. If you haven't gone through and properly treated your soil and gotten rid of the weeds, you're going to have all kinds of weeds coming up through your harvest. And how do we do this? How does this show up in our business? Well, if you're planting these seeds, but then you're having conversations of doubt and unsurety, and you're not excited about life, you're not focused on your own personal development, you're not keeping your PMA, your positive mental attitude, well, guess what? Your warm market and your leads and the people that you're talking to are going to feel that. They're going to feel your negative energy. And what's going to happen? Well, that's going to be just like the bugs creeping into your crop and eating away at them. That's going to be the weeds that grow up that you have to sift through, right? So, what is the message that you're portraying? Because sometimes you've done a lot of planting, plant. And then you let these weeds and these bugs of negativity come through your crop. Now, here's the thing, it's not just on us either. Because guess what? Your prospects have their own negative thoughts. They have their own seeds of doubt. They have their own skepticism. And how can you nurture that crop? Well, we've had some trainings on this recently, and I know that Helios is going to come up with some really cool tools that will help you in nurturing the process. But in the meantime, when you don't have all the fancy tools, that nurture your crop for you, you got to do things like Nate Lambert talked about, where you just have these short texts that you send out. You shoot out the short text that is a video of Mark Kohler that says, here's the text tip for the day. You shoot out the success webinar of Nate Lambert that says, look at what this a college professor's been able to do with his business, right? You send out those nurturing videos, those nurturing text messages. You gotta keep watering those seeds. How do you water the seeds? You always book a meeting from the meeting. The way that you keep the sprinklers on is you make sure that people are getting to events and they're being dripped on with information, right? And when I say drip, I don't mean the gross kind. I mean like a sprinkler, right? Watering the crops that is going to be your harvest. Now, what happens in the harvest if we've planted the seed, if we've nurtured the crop, and then we never go ahead and harvest? What happens then, folks? If we don't do the harvest, what happens? Well, our plants, our produce is going to die on the vine. It's going to die in the field. I heard a great saying the other day as I was listening to a sales training in the market, or a marketing training inside the Audible, and they said the difference between lettuce and garbage is a matter of timing. Now, doesn't that ring true? I don't know about you guys, but when I thought of it, I actually thought of spinach, because I'm one of those guys that buys the big bags of spinach because I'm always making my green smoothies, or at least I like to think I'm always making my green smoothies. But there's often times where the difference between that spinach becoming a smoothie or trash is a matter of timing, is whether I've decided to use it, right? So if we never ask for the order, guess what? Those leads are going to die on the vine. Those leads are going to die in the field. Meaning they're going to get distracted, or they're going to get focused on another part of life. And when you have somebody that's interested, I'll tell you this, guys, if they start wanting to put off their begin, if they start putting off, the idea of getting started now, the best thing that you can do for them is start breaking down their barriers and get them started somehow, some way. I don't care if you have to break it down to the minimum, right? If you do have to go down to $550 where they're signing up as an IMA and they're doing their UGA essentials, that's something. Now, obviously, we know that the best crop that we can get, or that they can get for themselves, right? The best thing they can do is get their combo. But in the meantime, if they've got these excuses, if they've got these reasons why they can't do it now, I'm telling you, the best thing that you can do for them is encourage them to get started somehow. Because if they don't get started, they stop showing up. What happens in fall? We got to start turning off the sprinklers, don't we? Otherwise, if we wait too long, those sprinklers are going to freeze up. Those pipes are going to freeze up. And this is what happens oftentimes to our leads, is if we don't harvest, if we don't ask for the order, if we don't ask for it again and again and again, because the studies show that most sales happen after the fifth no. The fifth ask. You've got to ask for the order 5 times and then again before somebody is going to step up and buy. Now, that's on average. Obviously, some harvests are going to be a lot easier, right? You're going to have somebody come down, they're going to see the information, and they're going to get started. I know that Dylan just had this recently, and obviously it was because of the type of crop that he was harvesting. It was a warm market. He had brought his mother down, and his stepdad came the next day, had never seen anything, but came to the follow-up, and immediately came to the back of the room and signed up. Got started with his education, right? So I want you guys to think about what can you do to make sure that you're first planting the seeds and always planting the seeds. The beautiful part about our business is you don't have to wait for the season. You create the season. And therefore, if you plant some seeds and then you nurture those seeds and then you harvest those seeds and you haven't been planting again, in fact, if you haven't been planting that entire time, you're going to have a lot of peaks and valleys within your business, right? We don't get paid on an hourly rate. We don't get paid just for showing up. We get paid if we harvest. And we can't harvest anything that we didn't plant. So my encouragement to you is always be planting seeds. Always be nurturing. Always be harvesting. And don't get focused on these far out activities, right? Don't be focused on how you can expand your land when you've yet to plant enough seeds to give you enough harvest to be able to buy that next plot of land. I hope this message was helpful for you folks. I've got to head to the location that I was heading to, and I've also got to jump on the pit team call. But I did want to bring you guys this message of the season, right? Make sure you're always planting, always harvesting, always nurturing. Thanks for joining us, folks. Get out there and make it happen.